Hi, I'm Professor Luce, and we're here to talk about Part 2, Chapters 6 through 10 today that deal with audience adaptation as well as some research and topic selection. So, when talking about your audience adaptation, it's really important that when you pick a topic that you are also selecting something that your audience has an interest in. Remember, your speech is not for you, it's for them. And if you're not specific in identifying why they should listen, you're going to have a lot of problems. In order to do that, you need to follow a couple of basic guidelines. First, you want to stick to simplistic information and avoid jargon or technical language. Second, you want to think about who your audience is and what kind of constraints they might have. Are there things that might distract them? Are they in a really hot room? Is it around lunchtime? Did they just eat lunch and they're really tired? You also want to think about why are they there? Are they there voluntarily or were they there because of other reasons? Was it extra credit? Is it that there's free food? Were they there to see another speaker and you happen to be there? All those things impact how the audience is going to view your information. Think about sales. When you go into a car dealership, you're expecting to talk to somebody about a car, right? Of course you are. But when you go home for a family dinner, you're probably not expecting your parents to confront you about money that you owe them from 5 years ago. You feel tricked, you're caught off guard, and you're not ready to receive that information right then. So understanding the situation makes it changes how you approach the speech overall. You need to build credibility within your speech, whether that's from personal knowledge that you have. If you've been horse riding for 10 years, it's a really good idea to include that in your information if you're talking about horse riding. But if you don't have that expertise, then you build it throughout the speech by using outside sources. And even when you have that credibility, you have that experience, you still want to use outside sources to show your audience that you're going to be credible. Within any audience, you have a target audience. So you're not going to always be speaking to every single person because they may already know that information, they may have already been persuaded, they may agree with you already, and sometimes they may disagree with you and not want to listen to logic or anything you say, and there's really nothing you can do. So when you identify that target audience, that's what you need to target your speech toward. There's always going to be situational constraints, things like if it's really hot, if it's really cold, how long is your speech going to be, do you need any additional equipment that you need to practice with ahead of time? Those are things that you need to consider before preparing your speech. When you select a topic, it is absolutely vital that you are able to articulate the reason the audience should care. For your informative speech assignment, and your persuasive as well, in the topic sheet quiz, you need to identify why the audience should care. That's on you. It may seem obvious, but you need to put it into words. If it's not obvious, you have to come up with the reason why. And if you can't come up with a reason why, it's just not a good topic. If you were going to teach an audience about why they should know 3 gourmet ways to make ramen into like a fantastic meal, that's easy to apply to college students because most college students have a limited budget. Ramen is something that's cheap and easy to make, and it's something that will save you money while at the same time providing you with good food. And what college student doesn't want a good source for a meal? So combining things like budget and something that you all want, food, that makes it an applicable topic. On the other hand, identifying the history of the Detroit Red Wings may be applicable to some of your audience members, but realistically, half of your audience isn't really going to care. Not even half, probably not even a third realistically. So it'd be really difficult to come up with a reason why the audience should care about that. So that's on you when you select a topic, is to identify right away why the audience should care. And if you can't identify that reason, you got to move on and find a different topic overall. You want to make sure that topics are not too simplistic and that they're not overused. So simple things like how to change a tire, how to change your oil, how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, those topics are not very complex. I know I'm going to push you with your topics to be more creative, but that is something that you need to keep in mind, is that I want you to move beyond that basic level, like what a speech would be at middle school or elementary level and beyond high school, and you're at the college level, so expect college level speech topics. One other thing to think about is it's called the decades rule, and it's an informal title. But what it basically means is, has this topic been around for decades, or is it something relatively new? So decades topics for persuasion are things like abortion, death penalty, seatbelt laws, smoking. For informative speeches, it might be like the biography of Oprah Winfrey, or how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? Or changing your oil. Those types of things have been around forever. So I want you to be novel and unique and find something that's going to stand out for your audience. When you're writing this speech, you need to have supporting materials, and this comes in a variety of ways. It can come from examples or narratives or testimony or facts or statistics, but all of these come from outside sources. You need to use outside sources to verify that what you're saying is true and accurate. Doesn't matter if it's informative or persuasive, that has to be the case. You may know something to be true, but we have zero reason as an audience member to know that that's true beyond your limited experience. That's why I rely on those stories from outside sources to show that it does happen in other situations. I included a media bias chart for you that was updated as of August of 2018, and I believe there's a new one out as well, but either one is acceptable to look at. The point of having the media bias chart is so that you can sort of see a sliding scale of where sources are credible. And so at the very top and in the middle, so on the top to bottom scale, you go from original fact reporting all the way down to contains inaccurate or fabricated information. From left to right, you get partisan, so most extreme left liberal to most extreme right conservative, and then the middle is going to be neutral. So at the very top, which is a whole just original fact reporting and is neutral, are things like Bloomberg, C-SPAN, AP, Reuters, and you may not have heard of these too often, but a lot of times local newspapers will utilize those and then insert it into their newspaper. Underneath original fact reporting, you get down to the next scale, which is fact reporting. So it means that they didn't do the research on the initial story, but they're using evidence from others that did. And then after that level, you get to complex analysis or mix of fact, and that's where you get people's commentary, their interpretation of what the data means. And you'll find sources in there like the Wall Street Journal, Time, The Guardian, The Economist. All of those are sources that have some of that fact reporting, but also some of their own analysis. And that's politically neutral, and those ones are fine. What I really want you to avoid is the stuff that's at the very bottom of the scale and the stuff that's really left and right. So at the very bottom of the scale, on the left-hand side, you see things like Patriotics, the Palmer Report, Forward Progressive, Bipartisan Report, which is not bipartisan at all. On the right-hand side, at the bottom, you see things like the New York Post, Fox News, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, The Blaze, and then at the bottom, but in the middle, you see the Inquirer, and that's stuff like, I saw Bigfoot, or Michael Jackson is alive. So it's just inaccurate, fabricated information, although it's not necessarily politically biased either way. Those are the types of sources I want you to avoid. I want you to avoid the ones that have incomplete stories or unfair persuasion. I want you to avoid most of the ones that have opinion or fair persuasion, and try to stick to the ones that are analysis enough. That's a really easy way to do it. You also want to stay away from the far, far right and the far, far left. Try to keep it as close to the middle as you can for utilizing your sources. It's not all encompassing. It doesn't address every single source, but it addresses most of the major ones. If it's a source from a random website, you shouldn't be using it as a source, because we have to know where that information comes from. We talk a little bit about where you should research. I include some links for you to be able to check out, as well as source credibility. Please check out the DHMO website and see where that goes. And then there's a section on the PowerPoint that talks about why and how to cite sources, and how you need to include verbal citations. That's going to be really important for the informative speech. That's it for part 2. Be sure to also check out, if you haven't already, the lecture on the informative speech assignment itself.